Hello and welcome back to A Sprinkle of Disney. You're tuning in to our 10th episode.
10. I can't.
I'm excited that we have 10 episodes.
I
When we
know.
started, 10 felt so far away. And I can't believe that. So we're recording it on a Monday, so it's December
Yeah.
tomorrow, isn't it? Yeah.
It is.
So you'll be listening to it in December anyway, lovely listeners. But it's crazy to think that it's like December and we started this in July.
July, yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
It's so cool to say that we've done 10 episodes. Well, about to have done 10 episodes.
We will have done when you listen.
Yeah.
And that we've managed to like keep it going and that people are still listening.
Yeah, that's the main thing. It'd be a bit sad if we got to episode 10 and we had no listens.
Actually, let's check. I was going to say, let's just check now because I was thinking about this before. If I go into our all-time stats,
we do love
how
the
many
stats.
We do love our stats, to be fair. So if we go into all-time and we look at how many, so our first episode has had 86 listens.
No. Oh yeah. My goodness. I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah.
That's so close to 100.
I know. Maybe by the end of the year we can hit 100 on episode 1. That would be quite cool.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. So we're so excited to have reached this. And again, it's the milestone for us, and we're so thankful for everyone who keeps listening. Clearly, all 86 of you that listen to number 1.
That's amazing.
Just while we ramble on about Disney, it's not particularly profound, is it? Really?
No.
You must all be really bored in lockdown. That's clearly what's happening. And we're really excited today because we are back around the cycle again, and we are back onto our next Disney Classic series episode, which we know that you all love as much as we do. They're our most popular episodes when we do our film reviews. So so we're happy to be on the next one. That's our third one now.
This
is
our third
classics.
Yeah.
But I think it's like our 5th film one.
Yes, because we've done a couple of like Disney Plus ones and films, which you've also enjoyed. So
we're gauging which ones you like. So hopefully today will be today's definitely been an enlightening one for me. The film, which Rosie's going to tell you what we'll talk about now.
Yes.
But it's definitely a little bit like out of our usual ballpark. So
definitely.
I'm excited today.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of our favourite episodes to record. It's definitely my favourite episode to record. The
film ones are the
best. Yeah, definitely.
I think because we're quite modern Disney gals, so we don't really listen to or watch the old ones as regularly. But it's been quite nice for us to go back and watch them.
Definitely. Yes. And speaking of that, if you missed our first and second Disney Classic episodes, if you head back to episode 2, that's when we talk about Snow White in all of its glory or lack of.
I highly recommend that one, to be fair. I think that's a banging episode.
It's hilarious. As if we started with that one. Like, obviously we had to because it's the first one.
Yeah.
But our reviews were something, so enjoy. And then if you head back to episode 6, you get the glorious Pinocchio review, which is on par.
It's equally, to be fair, it's equally as entertaining because we weren't a fan of that one either.
Yes, so yes, you're establishing that we are definitely modern Disney gals, like Katie said. But we still watch them and we still get something from it, and we'll always have something positive to say about them, and we'll learn something. So yes, but today though, we bring you something very different to Snow White and Pinocchio, in my opinion. Fantasia.
Good Lord.
This one is quite different to your usual Disney film in many, many ways, but one of the most different parts of it is split into segments. So it's not just a long feature-length film. It's a feature-length film that is split up into segments.
It's so long, Rosie. I can't cope with how long this film is.
Yes, so it's over 2 hours, which shook us both a bit when we loaded it on Disney Plus, and we were like, interesting. This is very
long. Snow White was long. Think again.
I was like, for its time, 2 hours is hefty. I was like, what were these people doing? Like, were they not working?
Clearly not.
But another main difference is that there's not really much dialogue. There's tiny parts.
There's speeches, aren't there? But there's no dialogue. Really,
No. So that's a huge difference from Snow White and Pinocchio. So, of course, as usual, we'll be discussing our thoughts on the film overall, but specifically the music, because this one's very music heavy. Animation, because again, it's all about music and animation combined in this one. So we'll have a lot of discussion about that. And then, of course, the segments themselves, because there are 8 different segments, which Katie will go into in a bit more detail soon. And then, of course, everyone's favourite part, we will give the film our rating out of 10.
iconic Disney film ratings.
Yeah, so if you're new here, every time we do one of these Disney Classic episodes, we review the film and give it a rating out of 10. I'd recommend listening to the
You
Snow
can watch
White.
if you want, but it will be the same picture the whole way through.
Yeah, I'd recommend listening to those ones just to hear our scores, honestly. It's worth it just for that. But yeah, so basically we'll be deciding whether it's a good film or not, and whether we would watch it again or recommend it. So yeah, let's get stuck in.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Our first Disney fun fact of the episode. This one's quite a long one, so bear with us, but it is a good one. So, Walt Disney envisioned Fantasia as a sensory film-going experience. Sight and sound to be sure, but Walt wanted more. He dreamed of producing this extraordinary film with extraordinary effects such as 3D, specifically for the Toccata and Fugue. I don't know if that's right, but that's the one with the abstract shape sequence. And he also envisioned filming the entire movie in widescreen. The ever-innovative impresario even hoped to introduce olfactory effects such as wafting perfume through the theatre as the wildflowers danced during the Nutcracker Suite segment, whilst Tarkovsky suggested gunpowder as a powerful scent for the sorceress spellcasting.
That's such a Disney thing.
It is. He wanted to make it basically 4D, really, because he wanted the whole sensory thing with the smells, and then he wanted to make it in 3D. He was very ambitious. Which
it sounds like what they seem to take that for, if anyone's been on Magic in Disney World or any of the Disney parks, where it's very music focused and it's like a 4D situation. It sounds like they've taken the idea and made that into
and developed it in the parks, which is really cool.
It is. We should also say now that we are definitely going to butcher some pronunciation.
Yes, because I had no idea how to say that
in this episode, so I apologise in advance.
It is hard to say, to be fair. It is. So yes. Yeah.
So we're going into segment 1. We're going to, if you've listened to us before in our film episodes, you'll know that we kind of give you a background into the context of the movie, and then some reviews as well. So here's one of my classic summaries of the film. I don't know how to do this one, to be honest.
This one's really hard.
So the film, the plot, there isn't really a plot. No. The way I like to see it, I think it's better if you think of it as 8 shorts put together. I think is a better way to think of it, because to be fair, it's not a film. It's not a film.
No.
In the way that we would normally appreciate a film. So the way it's set up is it's meant to be an appreciation for music, and kind of how images and music blend together on screen to create this big experience. The fact that you don't need words, the fact that you don't kind of need one long story, the fact that music tells a story, which is really cool. So the idea is really cool.
Yeah.
Experiencing it is another thing. We'll talk about that later. So it starts really uniquely, I think. It kind of starts with the band coming in, the band prepping and setting themselves up with the orchestra, and then it has narration in between each segment, kind of explanation of the music, of the story, and then there's 8 different segments, which I'm going to talk about more in a second, throughout the film. So you have intro, a segment, an intro segment, and it goes on like that. It's also split into 2 halves, so there's 4 segments and then a weird interval where all the band leave,
which no one needed.
It's very strange. That's like when they show the actual title screen for the film as well. It's all a bit bizarre.
Yeah.
And then they make a big deal of all of the orchestra coming back and setting up. It's very strange. It definitely feels more like a ballet or an opera set up than an actual film. But technically it is a feature film. As Rosie said, it's just over 2 hours. I think it's 2 hours 6 minutes technically.
Yeah.
So this is why it's so different to Disney's previous films, because there isn't that ongoing plot. It doesn't have dialogue. It doesn't have repetitive characters in it. That they're all individual stories. So I'm going to talk you through the 8 different animated segments, because what is really interesting is actually, I think I knew most of the music sets anyway. It's very classical music. So I'm going to grab this up. So there's 8. So the first one it's called Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. Is the first one. That's the one. That the one with the fairies, Rosie, or is that the one with the colour?
The one with the abstract shapes.
That's it. So this one was bizarre.
Yeah. Definitely.
So there's just lots of abstract shapes on screen. We then move into one of my favourite pieces of music ever, the
Mine too.
The Nutcracker Suite by Piotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky.
Very well pronounced.
Thank you. I love the music from the Nutcracker, and it's lovely because it has the it's like this is where we kind of have more classical animation. So we have the dancing mushrooms. I think the fairies are in that one, aren't they?
Yeah.
We have the fairies in there. I'll talk about it in a second because we're a bit shocked because they've got no clothes on. So that's number 2. Then number 3 is our favourite one, I think. It's The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which and with the music by Paul Dukas, and this is the one that's got Mickey, basically. Sorcerer Mickey comes from this film.
Yeah.
So there's that one, and it's quite famous because it's got like the master in it who's called Yen Sid, which is Disney backwards. So people quite often see it as a representation of Walt Disney himself, which is really cool.
Yeah.
We then have Rite of Spring, which I am actually familiar with. I studied this at uni, by Igor Stravinsky, and this is about dinosaurs and about kind of how dinosaurs came to be and then how they became extinct. Then we have the intermission, which then has it's quite cool. You meet a character called the soundtrack. So it's the idea of the soundtrack as a character within the film, which is really cool. But again, it's quite abstract on screen. And then number 6 is called The Pastoral Symphony by Ludwig van Beethoven. Got a lovely Beethoven piece. It's got female centaurs. It's all about like centaurs and like Cupid and stuff like that. That's very like Renaissance painting style, I think.
Yeah.
Then number 7 is Dance of the Hours by Amilcar Ponchielli.
Nice.
Thank you. I think that's Italian. I'm going to go with
Italian. It is. I'm sure it
is. Dance of the Hours. That's the one with the hippos and the crocodiles.
The ballet. It's the ballet. The different times of the day.
Yeah. Hippos and crocodiles is how I'm going to categorize it. And then it ends really dramatically with 2 different musical pieces. So number 8 is Night on Bald Mountain by Modest Mussorgsky. But then we also have the classic Ave Maria at the end as well. Just that classic song, which is that's the one that has like Chernobog, the really famous like villain with the massive wings and the fire.
Yeah.
It's a bit much. They don't kind of tie in together. They don't cross over. It's not like one person kind of jumps between them all. Like if you listen to our Pinocchio episode, we talk about how it's quite episodic in the fact that nothing really matches up, but Pinocchio and the characters kind of filter through.
Yeah.
This is very different. They're all individual episodes. So that's why I like to see it more. I think you enjoy it more if you look at it as 8 different shorts.
Yeah, as like standalone pieces that you could watch individually.
Instead of approaching it as a 2-hour film. Because I think when you approach it as a 2-hour film, it's very overwhelming.
Yes. And underwhelming as well.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that in a bit. Yes, so so they're the 8 different segments. It's conducted by Leopold Stokowski, and 7 of those pieces are performed by the Philadelphia Orchestra, and it's quite cool because they have like a master of ceremonies in it as well, which is the music critic and composer Deems Taylor, which is really cool because he kind of gives you a summary and overview of what's to come. So even if you're not like the most musical person or you're not kind of into things without dialogue, it gives you an idea of what's coming and what's going to happen. So this isn't as succinct as my usual summary, but it's hard, this one, to summarize because there isn't really a story.
Yeah.
It's more about the structure and the style, this film.
Yeah, I think there's more to say about that for this film than the actual film itself, because there isn't really a plot, like you said. So I think that was a very good summary, personally.
Thank you very much. I was enjoying I'm going to go back and listen to this with my Italian pronunciation.
So yeah, and then again, like I was just saying, there's more to say about the format of the film really than the actual film itself, and that kind of aligns with the reviews and the awards and the reception that this film has had, because at first glance this film is held in very high esteem. Obviously Mickey, Sorcerer's Apprentice Mickey, is like iconic. He's everywhere in all the Disney parks. He's also probably the first Mickey you think of as well. I know there's classic Mickey, but I still think of him with the wizard hat on.
I think because the wizard hat why can't I speak today? Because the wizard's hat, or the sorcerer, should we say, the sorcerer's hat, is was obviously the sign for Hollywood studios for a really long time. So I think it's kind of become synonymous with the idea of like of Mickey Mouse and like and Disney. So I think that's probably why, is that for some reason they used that hat for so long. I think Walt was really proud of this film, so I think that's probably why they used that symbol to do with like Hollywood studios and back when it was MGM studios in Florida. Because I imagine for Walt this really summarized what he wanted film to be.
Definitely. So in terms of things like reviews, at the moment on Rotten Tomatoes, this film has got 95% from the critics, so that's very high.
That is really high.
I think, yeah, very boldly high. But then the audience score is a bit less, so that's 83%.
That makes complete sense.
And yeah, that seems a bit more realistic, I think.
Let's be honest, it's a film for the critics. It's not a film to be sat
No.
and enjoyed over and over again for
No.
nostalgia. It's a film that's showing off.
Yeah, like if it was on Netflix, it'd be one of the ones that appears in the Critics' Choice category. You know, when you see that, like it would definitely be sat in that section. And then obviously we always look at IMDb score as well.
Of course.
And on there it got 7.7 out of 10, which again I think that's a bit more realistic than the 95%.
Yeah.
But this film actually won 8 awards, which is a lot. Yeah, I was quite surprised. But they're really kind of
like out there awards.
Yeah, they are. They're like kind of awards that can only have been achieved for like films like this because it's like a new thing, you know? So they kind of make awards for these sort of things, I feel like. So basically it was ranked 5th at the 1940 National Board of Review Awards in the top 10 films category. So that was a really, obviously bearing in mind this film came out in 1940, these sort of awards are huge because it marks the success of Disney and in its kind of infancy as well, because this is
I forgot that. Sorry, I normally give the year. Sorry, it's 1940.
It's okay. It's fine.
Sorry, everyone.
So obviously this is the 3rd feature-length film. So Disney is very much trying to prove itself at this point. So to be winning these awards so early on is great. So yeah, that's one of them.
Especially because I read that at this point, Snow White was like booming. At this point, it had become like a blockbuster film. So I think at this point they were under pressure again, like we said in the Snow White episode, and with Pinocchio. I think they're under pressure to consistently produce high quality work.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that shows with what the reception of this film was like, actually. So another thing that they won, so Disney and Stokowski won a special award for the film at the 1940 New York Film Critics Circle Awards. It's quite a mouthful of an award. And it was also subject to 2 Academy honorary awards.
Wow.
For 2 different reasons. So one was for the outstanding contribution to the advancement of the use of sound in a motion picture.
Okay, fair.
As entertainment as an art form. The other one was for the creation of a new form of visualized music in Fantasia, thereby widening the scope of the motion picture as entertainment and as an art form.
Again,
so you see what I mean?
Sense, yeah.
Like it slots straight into these awards, and obviously these awards were honorary, so they were made for
the film.
But still, very, very like high praise for your 3rd feature-length film for Disney.
Oh yeah.
So then what I've got is reception from the time. So I found some reviews from around 1940, and then I've also got some from around like the 2000s to kind of compare what the reception is now to what it was like then. So I've got positive and negative, so I'm not biased, don't worry. So Bosley Crowther, interesting name, from New York Times in 1940, so the year this came out, I'm believing it's actually the day after, because he says, motion picture history was made last night. Fantasia dumps conventional formulas overboard and reveals the scope of films for imaginative excursion. Fantasia is simply terrific. So that is very high praise.
Yeah.
And that was the day after they saw it at the premiere, I'm guessing.
Wow.
So it's also really cool. I love reading reviews of like films when they've just come out. So yeah, obviously high regards from him. Then we've got Edwin Shellert from Los Angeles Times in 1941. He said that Fantasia is caviar to the general and ambrosia and nectar for the intelligentsia. It makes no compromises. I know, they're big words. It makes no compromises. It is the noblest experiment of a wizard and his bright field of artistry and creativeness.
Oh my god, that's too many words. Sorry.
It's very like...
That summarizes this film, doesn't it?
It does. It's kind of like the whole pretentious thing. I feel like, So again, very high praise from the recent times. But then we have, in contrast to that, we have some people who didn't think the film lived up to Disney's previous success with Snow White and Pinocchio. So Dorothy Thompson from the New York Herald Tribune on November the 25th, 1940, very specific information, was particularly harsh towards the film. And she claimed that she left the theatre in a condition bordering on a nervous breakdown. Because the film was a remarkable nightmare.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a claim.
It is. So yeah, I feel like that's quite harsh. I don't think it's quite that bad.
Wouldn't say it. Well, to be fair, the last segment is a bit of a nightmare
That's
in
definitely a
like a
nightmare.
traumatic way. But I
Yeah.
don't think it's
I
no.
think there must have been other things going on in
I think
Dorothy's life.
Dorothy was clearly having a bad day.
Yeah. But what we found when I was researching is that actually a lot of the negative reviews come from musicians or music critics.
Interesting.
So Benjamin de Casser from the New York Journal and American said that the film brings great music down to the level of jazz.
Oh.
Which I feel like that's insulting for jazz.
Well, yeah. Musicians like to insult jazz, to be fair. I
Mm.
think because obviously jazz is less structured than other music forms.
Yeah.
It tends to be used as an insult, which is really sad.
It is sad. But yeah, that I feel like kind of.
I think that's also an insult to the musicians because it's really difficult pieces that they're playing. So I think that is quite insulting.
Yeah. So again, I think Benjamin probably.
I think Benjamin just needs to lie down.
I think
Benjamin's annoyed that he wasn't asked to play in that orchestra.
I think it was bitter. That's what it was.
Bitterness.
Resentment against
Benjamin
against the film because he wasn't asked to be in it. So
I know.
So yeah, that was kind of the reception from the time. So I should also mention that it did really well in the box office, actually. So despite it being a slow burner, gradually over time, it built up a box office accumulation of 84 million.
Wow.
Which for a film from 1940s is incredible. It was a slow burner though because of the context. So we had the World War going on during that time. So again, that has knock-on effects to whether people are actually going to go and see films, if that's their priority and stuff like that. So despite that, it was still a box office success over time, and obviously it's grown quite a big legacy since then. So its current reception. So in 1990, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So that's like, I researched this because I didn't actually know what it meant, but it basically means that they like think this film is that excellent that they must like hold on to it at all costs, and it should always be considered as an excellent film for those reasons mentioned. So that sounds a pretty big deal. So clearly even now it's received pretty well. And like I said, it's regarded as one of the highest grossing films of all time, with 83 million at the box office. So that's again impressive. So then we've got a couple of reviews, more recent ones. This is actually from this year. So a user from IMDb said that although this film is evidently different from other Disney features, this film follows a format similar to a concert rather than telling one whole story. It is arguably of Walt Disney's best works and a pinnacle in the animation genre, along with other Disney features released at the time, like Snow White and Pinocchio. So yeah, I agree with that because that's what we've been saying. Like, it isn't like one whole story like Pinocchio and Snow White. It is these segments or like episodic things that kind of stand alone, which makes it different. But clearly, they think it matches up.
Well, especially because when you look at the release date, so Pinocchio was actually released in the same year as Fantasia. But Pinocchio was released in February, and Fantasia was released in November. So I suppose as well at the time, if you've kind of made two feature-length films that are plot-based, character-based, based on fairy tales, you're going to want to experiment a little bit. So I guess it makes sense that they were releasing two in the same year. So they thought, let's try something. And again, if you listen to our both Snow White and Pinocchio, we talk about the impact of the World War, and the same thing happened again. I was reading here the fact that Fantasia was actually released as a theatrical roadshow instead of like a full box office release initially. So it went to like different Broadway theatres first, because it failed to make a profit initially because of World War II. Because they couldn't send it to the European market. So again, it was re-released several times, a bit like Pinocchio.
Yeah. And even Snow White had that as well initially. So
I just read there, if you like factor in for inflation, it's the 24th highest grossing film of all time in the US. That's insane.
Insane. Like, that just shows how much people love it, like, now. And
it's different, isn't it? I think that's the thing, is, we're talking a bit about whether we'd watch it again, but it's different. I think
it stands out.
Whether you would watch it again or enjoy the film, I think you can't ignore the impact, the cultural impact it must have had at the time, because it's so different.
Yeah, you have to appreciate how abstract and experimental and how revolutionary
and brave
it was
to release this, because they were on a path of success. They obviously had like Snow White, although Pinocchio didn't do as well as Snow White initially.
Yeah.
It did pick up, and you know they're onto a winner. So it was really brave in their third film to basically go a bit rogue and do something completely different. Because if this hadn't been received well, it could have marked the end. Really,
it could have closed Disney down
films.
forever, basically. So
very brave.
So yeah, and then just to make sure we're not biased, a couple of less positive reviews from the 2000s. So in 2000, Empire magazine said that this film is a very patchy affair. While some of the animated pieces work, others come across as downright insane. I have to agree.
To be fair.
I can't lie.
Some of the animation is beautiful, and some of it I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, and then someone on IMDb this year said, some great moments, but this thing is long, in capitals. Most of the animations meander around aimlessly. Kind of agree with that. Just not all that interesting most of the time. I
agree. And I think when we look at, when we talked about Snow White and we talked about the idea of like the level of detail that they put into the background, and the fact that Snow White was slow because they had like random scenes in there with animals and dancing and sleeping and whatever, just to have the focus on the animation.
Yeah.
The compromise between animation and story is gone in this. There is no animation is the focus.
Definitely.
And I think, that exposes the animation a lot. And as beautiful as it can be, at times it does feel a little bit pointless. Like there's a section I'll talk about in a bit properly, but in section 4 with the dinosaurs with Rite of Spring, and honestly the first like 15-20 minutes is just like orange explosions.
It's just the volcano.
And I was so bored.
Yeah, this is a problem. Like the timings, they're just I can understand why they're saying it's long and that it's slow and that it's not interesting most of the time, because if you cut it down, it would be more interesting.
It could have been half the length, and I probably would have enjoyed it more.
Or released as separate, shorts.
That would have been so much nicer.
As a series of shorts.
I'll do it now before films. I think it will be received in the same way that we love things like I love the I Love You and the Umbrella one, and like they become iconic shorts. If you were to put them all together, they all blend together and you kind of forget. So I think it would be nicer. I think it'd be quite nice actually if Disney released them on Disney Plus as like Fantasia shorts. That would be quite nice.
I think that would change people's views of
perception
it if you could watch
them
separately, because it is an ordeal having to like set 2 hours aside and sit down for it when you know it's not an actual film with a plot. So So overall, it's held in very high esteem, high regard. Obviously, we were just saying like it did really well at the box office. So yeah, it is very well regarded, but people do have issues with it, as everyone does with all films. But it seems to be specifically musicians that do not appreciate it as much, because the people that work in animation or appreciate animation seem to be really quite proud of this film. They think it's groundbreaking, it's revolutionary. So it is interesting that there's a divide between those two different art forms.
That is interesting.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
So that then brings us on to Disney fun fact number 2. So as Walt Disney began developing Fantasia, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was on the verge of becoming a blockbuster because he started developing it in 1937. Walt was always ahead of the game. Developing it at the time that Snow White was being released, and it was suggested that Dopey should play the apprentice instead of Mickey. So if you haven't seen the film in a long time, or you've never seen it, there's a section, the third section is The Sorcerer's Apprentice, where this is classic story of a sorcerer having an apprentice, ironically, who tries to do some spells that then don't go very well. And in Fantasia, it's Mickey who is the Sorcerer's Apprentice. It is really cute.
It is.
But it was suggested that Dopey should play the apprentice instead of Mickey. But of course, as we now know, Walt decided on Mickey in the end, and I'm so glad that he did. Dopey would have been funny.
Me too. Yeah, but not as iconic.
No, I don't think it would have been as lovable.
No.
As Mickey. It's just something, and because there's not a lot of normal humans in Fantasia.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in the same way with the animation either.
So yeah, I mean, I think it would have been nice. But I prefer Mickey. Definitely.
It would have been interesting to see how that might have boosted Dopey's popularity. It could have been Dopey we see all over the parks. Like,
oh my God, imagine
if he'd have been in this, who knows? But also, fun fact relating to that. So the reason Walt eventually decided on having Mickey as the Sorcerer's Apprentice was because he was having a massive decline in popularity. He was worried about Mickey just not being a valued character anymore. And obviously, Walt created Mickey and wanted him to be essentially the face of Disney.
Yeah.
So this is why they reanimated him as well. This is why in The Sorcerer's Apprentice you see extra details. So his nose has been changed. He's got pupils, which he didn't have before. You can see the progression from Steamboat Willie to Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Cool.
And the animations jumped quite a lot. And it's because they put so much effort into making Mickey stand out and hopefully gaining his popularity, which, as we know, it did.
That's really cool.
So, yeah. We love Mickey.
We're Mickey fans.
We are. So that moves us on to our second segment then. So this is where we're going to discuss our thoughts on the film for its time and then just generally overall. So I think this will be quite interesting. So Katie, what do you think of the film for its time? So when it was released?
I think it must have been a cultural phenomenon. And they did it something completely different, completely new, something that again was escapism during the war, because it is quite escapist, this one, I think, because it is very fantastical. The music is stunning, I also love how they've filmed the orchestra for the time period as well, because that must have been to mic all of the instruments and film them at the same time at that point in time when technology was as advanced as it is now.
That's
Even
true,
now, because obviously I come from I love musicals and I've directed musicals and stuff, and the band mics are always a pain because they have to kind of balance each other out. They have to be everyone has their own headphones. It takes ages to mic a band, let alone an orchestra the size of that. So I think that is incredibly impressive, that the sound quality throughout is as impressive as it is, given the size of the orchestra and the complexity of the recording. I think that's amazing. Again, I think the animation jumps a bit. I think, the bit with Sorcerer and Mickey and the Sorcerer's Apprentice, with all the water and the waves and the brush, I think that was amazing. That animation is fantastic.
Definitely.
I think then when you look at things that are like the was it the abstract one in segment 1 and the like I say in segment 4 with all like the volcano explosions, the animation to me just felt rushed. To be honest, because it wasn't as detailed. It was a lot more abstract, which is probably what they're going for. But when you compare it to like the beauty of like the Sorcerer and Mickey one, it's quite jarring.
It's underwhelming, isn't it? Yeah.
Especially when you look at things like, although it's creepy, segment 8 where you have like the massive villain one and all the like weird spirits rising from the dead, it's really strange.
It is.
At least it's intricate, whereas I feel like some of them just are missing out on that intricacy, which is, as we've said in episode 2 and episode 6, that's what we've loved about classic films, is that the intricacy of the animation outweighs the current films, because the modern films have that intricacy and that detail still, of course, because technology is better,
but it's less impressive because of that. That's why. Exactly.
And it feels like that it's easier to do that on a computer.
You've got the technology to support it rather than having to literally do everything by hand to start it up.
So I feel like Snow White and Pinocchio set that precedent, and because in Snow White and Pinocchio, apart from a few random moments, it's upheld throughout it all, whereas this one didn't feel like that. I did love the fact that, even like the interaction between Mickey, so after the Sorcerer's Apprentice section, we go back to the live orchestra, and we have a little section where is it
Stokowski,
that's it, kind of his silhouette in touch with Mickey's silhouette, and that's really creative
nice
at the time.
Definitely.
So I think, again, as I've said with the last films, I think it's creative for the time. I think it's it's ambitious. It's incredibly ambitious. I love what they were doing with the blend of music and animation, and trying to make classical music relevant and interesting, and kind of trying to interest people in that genre of music, because it is stunning. I think people must have been surprised when they went to see it. I don't think that's what they expected.
No.
I forgot that it was like this. I thought Sorcerer Mickey was in it more. I think I've seen Fantasmic in Florida, and Sorcerer Mickey tends to like command the whole thing. In my head, I kind of attached it to that, so I was thinking it was Sorcerer and Mickey throughout the whole thing. So I was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah,
we didn't have more Sorcerer and Mickey. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave that there for the time, because I think for the time it is
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you?
I agree. Like, again, I think we always say this, like, when we consider the time it was produced in and released in, it is always impressive, because we've got to think about how long ago that actually was. And of course, it was recently the 80-year anniversary for
Yes.
Fantasia. We always time this very well. It's not even on purpose.
We did. No, we do this quite a lot. We did it for
we
Lady and the
do.
Tramp as well.
Yeah, and Pinocchio, like, obviously, because they were very closely released.
Yeah.
So yeah, well done us. But yeah, I do think we say every time that when we consider it for its time, it is very impressive. It is very creative, and I think especially with this one, because there was nothing like it at the time. This is what a lot of other reviews say, is that this was so unique and so original. No one had done anything like this. The whole combination of music and pictures wasn't something that happened. So for that to have been made in 1940, to me, is actually extremely impressive. Like 80 years ago, you just think about the different technology that they had back then, the lack of technology that they had back then. Like, I think it's insane to think that they managed to produce something like this, albeit strange. Maybe they were differently creatively inclined.
Maybe not to our taste.
Yeah, but we can appreciate it. And of course, their choice of music is excellent. You can't fault the music. It's beautiful. And like you were saying, the Nutcracker music, I love it. There's something about that music that just makes me so like happy, and it's just very nostalgic.
Funny because when you actually listen to the Stravinsky again in it, and he introduces the Nutcracker, and he says actually Tchaikovsky wasn't that impressed with
he didn't think it was one of his best pieces. I
was like, well, someone proved you wrong.
I know, it's like that's one of the best pieces, if not the best musical piece, I think, in this film. I think it's excellent. And I also really love like how this film represents lots of different themes. I think it was just like we were saying, it's ambitious, but I think it's ambitious not only because it's combining lots of different like things like music and pictures and obviously like some sort of story, but it is also trying to represent lots of different themes. Like we've got the seasons, we've got lots of different times going on, the history of the earth with the
There's a lot of
spring.
Gender politics. Why can't I speak? Gender politics throughout it as well, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, I like that it's exploring so many different things. Like it's depicting mythical ancient Greece, and it's exploring different times of day, and also at the end we've got like night versus day, but dark versus light. So I think it's extremely ambitious to attempt to represent all of those different things.
It must have taken so long.
Yeah,
like so long to plan, prepare, record, edit, design. Like it must have taken so long. That just reminded me though, when we're talking there about themes, I think another one kind of negative that I noticed as a 21st century woman, if you watch the very beginning and all the musicians come in, I got really excited when I saw two women walk in. Really excited. Where did the women go? Straight to the harps. There's no in the orchestra apart from the harp players. Disappointing. I know it's 1940, but I think it's something we should kind of call out, is that it
is very telling of the time, isn't it? Actually,
it's a very male dominated situation, this film.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if you saw this, you probably did. At the start, as Disney Plus has done with quite a lot of films, it does come up with like a piece of text saying that like we appreciate that this isn't particularly good,
reflective of today.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's reflective of the time, and they do kind of almost apologize for it, like, and they kind of show you what to expect, which is good because at least they aren't kind of just putting it on there and saying like this is okay. So they're acknowledging they're not mistakes, but they're acknowledging, you know, the
flaws in these
issues that you'll
past,
find. Yeah, which is good.
It was just a shame because I was like, I got so excited because I thought, oh, there's like female like orchestral players. And I was like, oh, of course they're going to play the harp. And they like walked in separately to all the men. It was just a bit like,
I know. It was like, separation was very evident.
Yeah, which is a shame.
So yeah, but like for its time, I do think as well it would have been an absolute experience because we're used to so many different kinds of experiences. Like
that's true.
We can go to loads of different shows, like gigs, like concerts. There's so many different things now that we can do for entertainment. But back then, you were definitely a lot more limited. And you know, going to see a film, like going to the cinema, was a huge deal back then, just to see one film. So to see something like this that kind of gives you more value for money, I suppose, as well. It would have been extremely
it made classical music more accessible because I doubt like Like concerts of that level probably would not have been accessible across
No.
the country in America.
No.
Especially at this point during the World War, it wouldn't have been something that
No.
would have been easily
Not affordable.
attainable. So I think you're right. I think it probably again it increased that awareness and appreciation for arts as
Yeah.
well, which I'm always for. Always
Definitely.
up for that.
And another thing, obviously bearing in mind the context of the World War, I think we said this for Snow White, how it was like a bit of a release for people, like
Yeah.
something positive and happy for them to look
Yeah.
at. This is a bit different because for me it's like a sensory release. So when I was watching it, at some points I would find myself closing my eyes. I mean, I wasn't even falling
I
asleep at some
definitely did
point,
that.
but it's
Yeah.
sensory because it is so relaxing. Like the
Yeah.
music is so relaxing. And then some of the animation is also relaxing. Like obviously the abstract shapes, I was a bit like, oh, this is a bit too much for the start of the film.
Yeah.
But you get to some of them, especially the ballet one, which I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But that one I found extremely relaxing because it was almost like being at the ballet. So I think
that was the Dance of Hours, wasn't it?
that's it. That's the one. So I think that again would have been very relaxing and kind of soothing and would have taken people's minds off what was going on in the outside world. And that's probably something they really needed even more back then.
True.
So
very true.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I think for the time. But then if we take into account just the film as a standalone, not taking into account the time it was produced or released in, what are your thoughts then?
I'll be honest, I feel really uncultured saying this. I found it so boring. Like, and do you know what? This is me. Like, I'm not even somebody who has to like. Some people say, "Oh, like that's such like a 21st century approach. You gotta be spoon fed everything." No. I actually like ballets. So I recently went to before lockdown. I say recently. It was like 9 months ago. Went to go and see the Red Shoes, which is like quite a classic ballet. Is that one of Tchaikovsky? I can't remember actually. Probably not. I probably just made that up. But I love a ballet, and I don't need dialogue to enjoy something. What I do need, as we know from previous episodes, is deep, interesting characters and a plot, and like a really exciting plot, but mainly characters. I was actually chatting to one of my very best friends, Elspeth, who I know is a regular listener. So hi, Elspeth. Because she was saying about how, like, obviously I love Brave, and she's not as big a fan of Brave as I am at all, because she prefers plot over character.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. So she's like, it makes sense as to why I like it more, because Brave is much more character focused.
Yeah.
So for me, the fact that this film lacks character development because it's just it's repeated separate segments.
Yeah.
I struggled to keep entertained. I'll be completely honest. I skipped through stuff. Like I clicked through. Honestly, because I was so bored.
There's just not enough time as well to get to know the characters. Obviously, we know Mickey because we know Mickey, but like everyone else, I don't even know like their names. They do have names, but you have to heavily research them, and they're really abstract names as well, which fits the animation. But you like to get to know characters, you need a long period of time with them, and that's what's missing from this.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, if I was studying at a university for like history of art or and whatnot, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
So I think with this film, you have to separate it between an appreciation for the art form and its individuality and its uniqueness from a film you would sit down because you want to watch it.
Yeah.
I think they're two very separate things in this film, because I'll be completely honest, I would never voluntarily put this film on again.
No, I wouldn't either.
I just wouldn't.
No.
But if I had to kind of sit and look and potentially analyze it for whatever reason, maybe if it's like a uni assignment in the past or like for whatever reason, I think I'd really enjoy that with with an analytical side of my brain on. I think it'd be really interesting. If I want to sit and chill out and watch a Disney movie, it's a no from me, because it's too long. It's way too long. It's too disjointed. And it's not, you have to, I felt like I was just bored, honestly, which is ironic because I felt like I had to concentrate more to watch it.
Yeah, which you don't want when you're relaxing and kicking back and watching a film. You want to be able to be fed a plot that engages you, so that you're not having to literally. Because I'll be honest, I had to rewind when I was watching this because I missed something, and suddenly something had evolved, and I was like, "What did I miss?" And I didn't even do anything. Like I must have shut my eyes or something, and we were suddenly somewhere else, and I was like, "Oh." So
how many times have we talked about, you know, how important, this is why Pixar is so fantastic, because of the emotional connection.
Oh yeah.
you don't have a chance to have an emotional connection with
No,
the film because it's
not
not
at
about
all.
emotions. It's
No.
about, that's what I said before. It's like, which is fair enough. It's a beautiful film. The music is stunning. I love classical music.
Yeah, me too.
Because classical music tells a story, so that's why I love it. The problem is that when you have classical music like a ballet, all of the music feeds into one another. So if I had a 2 hour of the same characters and the same music score, I probably would have really appreciated it a lot more.
I
But
agree.
it's so disjointed between all the different characters, all the different stories, all the different songs. So my intellectual autistic brain really appreciated it.
Yeah.
My casual film enjoyment side wanted to switch it off and put Tangled on.
Yeah.
Which is a shame. And like I say, I felt guilty because I was like, do you know what? It's such an impressive piece of film, technically, but it was just missing that emotional connection. And I think, you know what? I be honest, I watched this in 3 sittings.
Yeah, it's a long sit down, like, because I watched it all in one, and I regretted that. I was messaging Katie, and I was like, I'm nearly falling asleep. I was like, I can't.
Especially when you were waiting for, like, as I said, I really was expecting Saucer and Mickey to be in it a lot more, and then because he comes quite early on, so after that I was like, oh well, what's the point?
And it's a short segment as well because they are all different lengths.
Yeah.
And his one is so short, and you're like, oh no, that was the bit I was looking forward to. So then I was thinking, oh no, what's next?
I was thinking, I said to you, Rosie, didn't I? I think it might be quite nice if you had like toddlers or kids. It might be quite a nice thing to put on for them because I think that the problem when you tend to put a full feature-length films on for kids is they tend to lose interest.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you have them like different characters each time, I think the kids might appreciate that because there's no dialogue. Especially if kids can't talk yet.
Short attention span as well. So
I think kids might quite enjoy it, to be fair, because it's very sensory based, and obviously kids are a lot more sensory based than adults. So I think kids would enjoy it a lot more. But it's not it wouldn't be a, hey, what film should we put on tonight? Let's watch Fantasia.
Yeah, it's not something to get excited about for a movie night.
It feels more like a work project.
Yeah.
That's ticking a lot of boxes. Like, when you write an essay for uni, or like, do you remember like in high school you'd have to write a story, and the story that you'd write at home in your free time would be a lot different to the story that you'd write in your GCSE.
Yeah, because you weren't ticking like towards a mark scheme.
Yeah.
That's how it feels, I agree.
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to add, because I think we feel the same about this film.
We do feel very similar, and I think what I would say though is I agree with you in this respect, but what I'd say is I have to separate it completely. So I see it as like a cultural piece and like an educational piece of like the arts, because for me, like, it is quite nice to spend so much time listening to classical music because it's not something I would choose to do, and I feel like I'm being educated in that respect when I know the stories.
I love the platform it gives us. I love the platform it gives it, classical music, and the focus it gives, and even although it was annoying to watch, like I was like, start the film, even like the focus they give on people like prepping their instruments and stuff like that. Like, it's
that's what I mean. It's educational as well for people that might not have seen what an orchestra looks like, because we can't assume that everyone's seen all of these things. It's kind of shows you how much work goes into films behind the scenes as well, because obviously, like, you have music in the other films like Snow White and Pinocchio, but you don't see it being produced or being played. So I think it gives a bit more respect to that side of the film industry, because it's so easy.
When people go to, like, if you ever go and see Chicago, on the West End, or Broadway, they have the band on stage, and it's quite revolutionary because you don't normally get to see the band.
Exactly.
And have a fascination because music is seen to be quite like a high profile, highbrow, like hobby. Because obviously it's quite expensive to learn to play music. So I think we have a fascination as humans with music and the way that it's set up and with an orchestra. So I think you're right. I think it's nice that people, again, back in the day as well, accessibility for that is nice, as well as today as well.
Yeah, I think it's just nice that we're getting to see what a film like breaks down into, because normally you can only really appreciate the animation and maybe the voice acting. You don't really think about everything else and all the production that goes into that. I have to obviously agree in the sense that I'll admit I was bored at times, and I did nearly fall asleep. I might have been especially tired when I was watching it, but there were some points where maybe it's just because it was too relaxing, because like I said, it is very relaxing. Like, the music's really nice, and also some of the colors, they're very soft that they use in the animation. So that alongside some classical music is nice and relaxing. So I think it is good for kids to put them to sleep, I would definitely say. But again, for kids, it's very educational because you've got all of these things that they'll be learning in school about the seasons, about time, the history of the earth, things like myths, all of that kind of stuff may not be so tangible when kids are learning it in school. But actually, in a film like this, they might be more interested in it because it's being shown in lots of different mediums.
Yeah.
So again, it's quite an educational piece.
I agree.
But yeah, like you said, like I would never pick this over any other Disney film, to be honest.
I would
I think
watch Snow White over this.
Me too. It's just not, and again, like you were saying, it's not because we're not, like we've not got the
It's
kind
not
of
because we're ignorant
education.
of the
No,
the
because
concept.
like for this episode, I did so much research because I feel personally I don't know a lot about music and classical music, so I made sure to research a lot of this before giving my opinion on it in case I wasn't thinking about things in the right way or giving it enough chance. But having done my research and educated myself, I can safely say that it's just not for me.
No.
But again, like it's not because I've not been exposed to these sort of things. Like I used to go to the ballet with my grandparents at Christmas every year, and that was something I really enjoyed to do. So it's not that I don't love this sort of thing. It's just that for a Disney film and a feature film, it's not what I expect, and it's not what I want necessarily. But of course, there'll be some people, this is like their cup of tea. This is exactly what they want in a film, and that might be why this is some people's favorite films because it's its own genre. So yeah, I think we agree though.
And I think you're right. You know what? We can separate, as we always do, an appreciation for the style of the film while still acknowledging that it wouldn't be a film that we choose to watch.
Yeah.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
That moves us on to our third fun fact. I always get impressed when we get to like the third one.
I know.
It feels so fast. So, as if to highlight the artistic peak to which Mickey had ascended, Fantasia's gala premiere was held at the theatre formerly known as the Colony, where 12 years ago, almost to the day, the mouse had made his debut in Steamboat Willie on November 18th, 1928.
Oh, wow.
How nice is that? It's the details with Disney. It's always the details. They plan everything in advance, and there's so much thought into it. And again, that just highlights how much Walt wanted to put Mickey in the what's the word? I can't even think of the word. Spotlight. Thank you. In the spotlight. So yeah, again, I think that's a nice touch. Very Disney.
So speaking of Mickey, because I have a feeling I know what's coming.
Yes.
What was your favourite segment in the film?
So I've got two. Obviously, The Sorcerer's Apprentice is my favourite. I just think it's not even just Mickey. So if we take Mickey out of it, I think we were saying before, the animation in that seems
stunning,
so much ahead of the rest of the film. And not only that, I just kept thinking how much ahead it was of Pinocchio. We could see a development, and obviously, like you said, they were released in the same year. So to see such a huge development in animation and progress in a company, I think that's incredible. So true. I think the animation really struck me in that piece, but obviously the music, the score itself is a wonderful score as well. It's beautiful.
It's that music that's like dun 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 dun, and it's like become quite iconic now. That kind of that music piece, with the brooms. It's just it's that is a scene I think where the music really comes alive.
I was just about to say, for me, that music actually does tell a story.
Yeah.
The rest of them you have to make the story yourself or try and match it up with the animation. But I feel like you can kind of create a story in your head with that music on its own.
Yeah, I agree.
And then obviously when you see the animation of The Sorcerer's Apprentice, it fits it so well. Like you've got the broomsticks carrying the water in the buckets, and it's just so perfectly timed. And I love that because there is a story. There's a story that Sorcerer Mickey was too ambitious and he was also too lazy.
That was what I thought when I finished that. I thought the moral of the story is don't be lazy.
Yeah, because he was like, I know what I'll do. I'll use magic to make my job easier and my life easier. And it didn't go so well, did it?
No, it didn't.
That's a good moral.
And I think it's interesting that you say that because I'm fairly certain in the film they talk about the fact that The Sorcerer's Apprentice was a story that came before the music.
Yeah.
Whereas in most of the segments, the music came first. So they're kind of trying to attach a story to the music.
Yeah.
Whereas I always think I'm currently listening to plugging another podcast, but hey ho. The podcast I'm listening to at the moment is called Fourscore. It's a Disney podcast where they interview Disney composers. So and they're like high profile ones as well. There's like I listened to one this weekend this week of Kirsten Anderson and Bobby Lopez who did Frozen and Frozen 2. And Christoph Beck, who also did Frozen and Frozen 2, and he did Ant-Man and Ant-Man the Wasp as well. And they talk about their process and how they kind of work with the music and the plot. And I think the best music always comes when it partners with the plot and isn't separate. And
definitely.
That's why I think the Sorcerer's Apprentice section is the best, because the two work together.
Yeah.
Instead of kind of stick one on top of the other.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it's just so iconic as well. Like, obviously you have to put that aside when you're looking at it, because you can't really just consider how well it's done and developed over time, that specific segment, as your only thought process for it being so good. But it does have an influence on how you perceive it, because you see it, like we were saying, in Disney parks, it's so prevalent.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that both of us, the only part of this we remembered before watching it was The Sorcerer's Apprentice, says a lot about what we thought this was about. Like, I honestly thought it was going to be an hour of Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realise it was so short. And the fact that such a short piece can have such an impact on us as well, to the point where we know it's our favourite and we've got lots of things to say about it, to me shows just how good it was. And I kind of wonder if they'd have released that on its own. I would love to have seen the reception.
An extended version of that would be great.
I would love to have seen that, because I think it would have done so well. Because for me, if you cut the rest out, I don't mind at all. No. I literally don't think I'd miss most of it.
No.
So yeah, I think it's just a very creative piece, like with all the water. And I think everyone loves a bit of magic, and Disney is magic. So I think the whole sorcerer and wizardry element to it is just nice, because it's what you expect from Disney. I think this is the other thing. When you go into a Disney film, that is what I'm expecting. Something like that, a story like that, not some random like mythic Greece like stuff. Like, I don't know what I was watching. I was like, this is interesting, it's educational, but it's not Disney. Like, I don't see that as Disney.
That it's not even about the lack of dialogue. It's about the strength of the story that's presented and how well that's communicated. And the fact that, that's probably the only segment, I'm just checking my own brain, that's probably the only segment that I actually learned something from and thought, the moral of the story is don't be lazy.
Exactly.
Whereas and the others, you don't really get that from. It finishes and you're like, oh thank God that's over, what's next?
Exactly. And I think because it's probably it definitely is the least abstract piece of them all. Makes it more tangible, and you're a bit more solid about what's actually going on. Whereas with the rest,
it's worth pointing out that it still is only animation and music. It's just it's just the effectiveness of the communication and the blend between the two. But that's just where it's most successful, because the music matches the animation perfectly, which means the story is communicated even better. And they don't try and do too much. I think I'll be honest, I think that's where this film falls down a little bit for me in terms of my connection with it, is that it tries to do too much all the time.
It's too ambitious. It could have done probably 3 of these segments and been as impactful, because the other one, which I'll briefly talk about, that is my other favourite, is Dance of the Hours.
That's my other. Oh, that's so interesting.
I suppose like we both like ballet, then that kind of makes sense.
That's true.
But I don't know, obviously I love animals, as you guys know. Apologies, I bring it up every time. But like, I think it's so creative, and I kept thinking when I was watching it was that actually I'd love to see a piece like that actually on stage. And I think that proved to me that it was a successful story, in the sense that you knew what was happening. Obviously you've got like the story being told you before it happens, with the orchestra and everything, but I think you can kind of gauge what's going on. Like, the time is progressing throughout the day, new animals come to signify that. I just think it's very creative, and I like the choices of animals as well. I thought that was very interesting.
Well, fun fact for you, I realised as I was watching this, if anyone has seen Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas, the opening of that film sees Daisy and Minnie having like a skate off, an ice skate off, and there are 2 animals that are included in that, hippos and crocodiles. And they are the same animation and the same style, and you can kind of tell as these Fantasia animals in Dance of the Hours. So I thought it was really cool how there's a link back, because Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas is like 2000s. So the fact that they've linked back 60 years to Fantasia, I thought was really nice.
That's a nice nod. And again,
Yeah.
it's very Disney thing
Yeah.
to do. So, oh yeah, that's nice. And I think the score of Dance of the Hours is good as well.
Yeah.
But I suppose like my favorite score is the Nutcracker Suite,
Oh
definitely.
God, yeah.
But the animation in that is like the mushrooms are nice.
It's
But
meaningless. That sounds really harsh.
yeah,
but it doesn't
it
mean
is.
anything.
It's just to fill the space, fill the
Yeah.
void, something to go with the music. That's what it is. It's just assisting, but it's not
Yeah.
communicating the story. So I think in Dance of the Hours, the animation does go with the music, and I think it does communicate a story, albeit not the most interesting story. It's still a story. You've got a beginning and an
Yeah.
end, as you do to a day. So I think that's my second favorite piece. And if I'm honest, like the rest of them, I could have done without them all. There's bits to appreciate in all of them, and I did
Yeah.
think the Rite of Spring, I thought that was very educational, and I did like how it represented time and evolution. I thought that was cool, but I also just think I didn't need it. Like, it wasn't
Yeah.
groundbreaking or anything. So yeah, my favourite's obviously The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm guessing you're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, I mean, the Sorcerer's Apprentice bit is definitely my favorite. I
Mhm.
think, you know, even if you ignore Mickey for a second, the blend of magic, the idea of like as we know, I think I've mentioned before, I love water. I love
Yes.
bodies of water. So I love the water use in that, and the water animation in that section. Again, there's a story to it, and I think that makes a big difference. But we've already talked about that, so I'll swiftly move past that one. I also love Dance of the Hours, but I think the reason I loved it is the animation in that I thought was beautiful. I thought the fact that they managed to make the hippos. So basically, in this segment, there's like hippos and elephants at some point as well.
Elephants,
and
crocodiles, and something else. Oh, ostriches. That's what it kicks off with. Yeah.
Are all like taking part in this ballet, and it's beautiful. But what I loved was the hippos were animated to be so graceful and
delicate,
and everything you would not associate with a hippo. So I
or an
thought
elephant. Yeah.
So the talent for me in the animation in that was incredible. Like the way they landed from their jumps and turned, and that for me was so clever.
It was
And again, it's those
seamless.
details that I think make it so special.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like that magic, it's character, and that's what I love. So yeah, I love that one. That one was really, really clever, and because it had the nod to the Twice Upon a Christmas, which I love.
Yeah.
I also like. I mean, you know, with the Nutcracker again, I love the music. I think it's beautiful, and I love the animation of the little, you know, the little fairies and stuff. Like, it's cute, but again, like, it didn't kind of. I couldn't tell you what was happening in any of the other segments. I wasn't a fan of the first one, the abstract one.
No.
Rite of Spring. Do you know what I find about this whole film? I don't understand how it was a kids' film because it was so aggressive. The amount of like, me and Rose were laughing. There's a lot of naked nymphs and fairies in this.
Yeah.
Whereas like full on like boobs and bums are out like
they're not subtle at
all. And there's even like bits of like, you know, ladies downstairs are
Yes.
like framed by lines. Like, it's weird.
It is. It's a bit much.
So there's those, and then there was the there's also a bit weird because I think, was it in the Rite of Spring, maybe, where they're under the ocean. Some of those fish and plants honestly look like willies, and I couldn't unsee it.
Oh, I didn't
Like, honestly,
see that.
I was like, I can't unsee these plants.
I might have been half asleep at that point.
There was just a lot of them, I think, that again didn't, you know, the Pastoral Symphony, that's Beethoven's piece, that has like centaurs in it. Beautiful and very inventive, but there was too much going on. Like, it was about groups of people, and I was like, not to be rude, but I'm not interested.
No.
Same, but it's brutal. In the I was thinking, even in the Sorcerer's Apprentice one, Mickey literally hacks the thing to pieces with an axe.
Yeah, does.
In Rite of Spring, that the T-Rex literally like murders another dinosaur.
Horrible.
But all of the shots of animation, you literally see like the dead thing lying there with its eyes. It's weird.
Yeah, it is quite grim.
Once you then also get to Night on Bald Mountain, and there's like demons that are like climbing over each other and like being flung into the burning pits of hell. Like, it's very dark. So yeah, I think my favourites, to summarise, because we're running out of time on this segment, to summarise, I think, Sorcerer's Apprentice and Dance of Hours, because they're the ones with the clearer story. But I will say I love the music in all of them. The music,
the music's never, you don't ever get let down by it. It's just that I could listen to that without the images. That's all it is.
Because that's our next talking point, but I feel like I probably covered that a little bit. I feel like I'm happy with the way that the music works when the animation's designed. I think we've touched on that. I think the fact
that I think we both agree that.
Yeah, I think if you look at something like The Dance of Hours and you look at Sorcerer's Apprentice, the music and the action and the animation blend.
Yeah.
Whereas something like The Nutcracker, although the music is stunning, what's on screen, like I love what you said before, Rosie, it's just filling time. It's filling the screen.
Yeah.
Which is a sad way to put it, but I think it's an accurate way.
But it's true. It's the same with obviously the abstract one. Like I get what they were doing. I get the concept behind it, and it's cool and it's inventive and creative, but it just doesn't do anything. Like,
I mean, I like the idea of when they in the intermission when they bring on. I thought it was quite clever because the master ceremony is like, oh, I found this special guest hanging around the studios, and it's the soundtrack. I love the idea of bringing the soundtrack in as a character and realizing how important the soundtrack is to a film. Because listening to this Disney's Four Score podcast, I love Disney music anyway, as you all know, but it's really emphasized it for me as to how much music contributes to a plot. However, it went on too long. And I love the idea of like when a musical note happened, like it showed it visually on screen, but they could have done that 3 or 4 times and then left it. It went on for 20 minutes.
I think what it also shows is how important it is to have all these different mediums to create a story. You can't just have it with the animation because you need the music, you need the sound to indicate what's going on. You also just can't have the music because you need something to visualize to carry you through what's going on. And that's what the Sorcerer's Apprentice does so beautifully, is it matches them, it intertwines them perfectly, so you actually don't think of them as a separate element. With all of the other pieces, I was struggling not to be thinking I was just listening to a classical score and then just watching some random images. So I think it just signifies how much goes into a film, and then obviously these don't even have dialogue in them, so it's just an impressive feat basically to create a feature-length film. But yes, of course, if you lack any of those elements, it doesn't work, as we've discovered in this film.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
And with that, we'll move on to Disney Fun Fact number 4. So for its general release and past restorations, Fantasia was cut to reduce its running time, but at 2 hours and 6 minutes, the film is still the longest animated feature the studio has ever made. It would have been even longer, but a 9th segment, Claire de Lune, was nixed during production. The segment was later rescored and included in the comedy musical Make My Music. And because they mention Claire de Lune, don't they, in it? If you listen to the Master of Ceremonies conversation, he does mention Claire de Lune and the moon. And that would have been lovely because I know the Claire de Lune music is beautiful. But I couldn't have done another segment.
I was just about, honestly, all I kept thinking was thank goodness that they didn't include that. Like, I'm sure it would have been nice. I was way too done to wait for something else. No, thank you. Not needed.
It's funny though how they recognised that it was too long, but they only cut one out, and that's
I know, it's like interesting. Did you not think of maybe halving it so it was a bit more interesting? But
apparently not.
Clearly, Walt was like, "No, we're putting all of these out there. People are going to have to take it," and it did well. So what can we say, really? To be fair. So now we move on to our favourite segment. Well, it's sometimes a struggle of a segment. It's also a bit sad because we always feel bad. And this is why we look forward to doing our favourite films, because it'll be a very different story.
It will.
So this is where we give our rating out of 10 for Fantasia. So just to recap, spoilers if you haven't listened to these episodes, but still worth going back. Snow White, I gave it a 4.75 out of 10, and Katie gave it a 4.5.
Yeah.
I actually think that's very generous looking back now. I would probably change mine.
I still stick with mine, actually, to be fair. I think I'm still...
You're more confident in your choices. I'm always a bit... I'm not sure. And then Pinocchio, I gave it a 2.5.
You were harsh on Pinocchio, to be fair.
I was, and you gave it a 3 out of 10. So that's kind of the bar that we've set so far.
God.
So this is number 3, and I actually quite love the fact you're going first. So what are your overall thoughts on the film, and what would you give it?
I think it's incredibly creative. From an analytical, intellectual point of view, it's a stunning film. It's very clever. It's very brave. As I've said before, I think it's revolutionary. I love how it aims to put the focus on music, because music is so often overlooked in the arts. it's always seen as something that's actually supporting instead of being something that's actually integral. So I love that focus. I love lots of the different segments, as I've mentioned, and the just the music in general is gorgeous. However, I honestly would never choose to watch this film again for pure casual leisure-based stuff. So unfortunately, for that reason, because you have to just be honest, do you know what? If I was an academic and I was doing it for like an analysis of, medium and genre and stuff, it'd be a much, much higher score. As a Disney fan, just looking for a Disney film to watch, would I watch this again? No. So it's going to be a 2. I'm not even sorry.
I just think if Walt was here, he would.
That's what I keep thinking. I think he'd hate
I'm
us.
sorry. I'm so sorry, Walt.
I think he'd understand though, because I think we've talked in the past about how Walt always talked about how important it was to emotionally connect with the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that we can appreciate that what he did was exploratory.
Yeah.
Word? Yeah.
Yeah.
Innovative, creative, all that kind of stuff. It's something that you can watch and appreciate for what it is.
Yeah.
And not want to ever watch it again. So while I appreciate it, don't want to watch it again.
Yeah. I'm on the same page, as you probably guessed, because we
Yeah.
basically said the same thing
Yeah.
throughout. I do appreciate it like as an individual thing, as a piece of art, I guess. I would never see it as a film. It to me that's not a film.
As a piece of art history, it's iconic.
Yeah, definitely.
As a film, it's questionable.
It is just boring. It is like there's no other way to put it, honestly. I know that's a bit blunt, but it is boring. And
I'm gonna put that on our episode artwork.
And honestly, I am quite good with attention. I will give things my full attention.
Yeah.
And I was there like falling asleep.
Well, I studied modern art. I studied at uni in my first year of uni, modernism in the arts. And I literally actually studied Rite of Spring. Actually, it's one of the things I studied. So it's not that this is something that I should have loved, but didn't.
No. So what I will say though, and actually do I change my score?
Oh.
Yes, maybe. The one thing I will say is that I think it was very experimental, and I do just love the fact that they managed to nail some of the stories just by combining the music and the animation. And I'm obviously more of a fan of animation than I am music. That's where I lean towards with every film. And I can appreciate the animation, especially in Sorcerer's Apprentice. And I'm just grateful that Sorcerer Mickey was birthed from this film. Thank you, Walt, for that, because I think we're all grateful for that at the very least. So it's hard. I think I'm gonna have to give it a 2 as well. I was gonna do a 2.5, but I was like, Pinocchio is better. It is.
I know.
That's a big statement, honestly. That's not me taking things lightly. So yeah, I think it's a 2. And I think it's just because we don't see it as a film. So it's almost like we don't know where to fit it.
We were rating it. If I was writing a paper on this, completely different approach.
Yeah.
But we're not writing a paper on it. We're trying to sit and enjoy a film, and unfortunately, you can't. It's just boring.
Yeah. I think it's almost in its own lane, and to the point where it's actually hard to compare it to other Disney films.
Yeah, like its own genre and stuff like that, isn't it? Like it doesn't. It's you can't compare it to other Disney films because it's completely different.
No. However, that doesn't mean we don't appreciate all the effort that went into the film and how experimental it was, because it was a big deal.
Yeah.
So yes.
And the fact that it's a beautiful film. I mean, how many times I go to an art gallery and I think that's a beautiful art painting, and then I move on.
Exactly, and I think we both would agree that I would rather this was released as shorts and I could dip in and out and I'd pick the ones I'd watch.
Yeah.
And I just think, I know it was successful, but I actually think Sorcerer's Apprentice as a short on its own would have hit differently. I really do think that would have happened. So
I agree, and I think maybe seeing more shorts of, I think that might have led to more Sorcerer Mickey shorts.
Yes.
And the other thing I was going to say, I think if you look at this as a piece of art, as an artwork, you get a very different experience if you think of it as a film.
Definitely.
And I think obviously we'll be doing Fantasia 2000 because the film does have a sequel.
It does.
So which we'll be doing in the future. Probably quite far in the future.
Far along.
But it'll be interesting when we kind of look at that and see how that has changed. Obviously they brought new technology to the same concept.
Yeah.
So interesting to see how we do that.
Yeah. Well, 2s all round then. Apologies if it's your favourite film. I'm sure we've maybe disappointed you, but everyone has different
understand
opinions.
why. I think that's the thing. Like when Elspeth, my friend I was saying before, messaged me and be like, "Oh my god, what are you talking about?" But then she's like, "Okay, fair," because it's like people have different appreciation for different things, and I think hopefully even if it's your favorite film, you can understand that we appreciate the film without loving the film.
Yeah, it's just not for us. So yes, on that note, then, thank you very much for listening, if you've made it all the way through our rambles about this interesting film. And if you've enjoyed, then please subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or follow us on Podbean, or do all of them if you're so inclined. We appreciate all of it. And if you've been listening for a while, we'd really appreciate you leaving a review. And thank you so much to all of the wonderful listeners who've already done this. As we said before, it really helps us in terms of where we appear in things like searches and things like that, and it means that more people are able to access us that maybe wouldn't have done before. So please do that if you'd like to, and as we said, it really makes our day, so that's great. And if you've got any Disney loving friends, please make sure to pass us on to them and to our wonderful community.
And so don't forget to follow along with our Instagram. We apologise, we've been very quiet over the last 2 weeks. The reason this podcast is also a little bit later than it should be, I'm in the middle of getting a new job and moving house, so we've been a little bit all over the place, I think, with so again, the 3rd podcast episode in a row, I'm making a public apology to Rosie.
Oh no,
I've definitely delayed this one, but we will be picking that Instagram up again in time for Christmas. So definitely follow along there for latest adventures, throwbacks, or whatever we can post in this lockdown time. We also post like preview snippets sometimes on there of the episodes as well, so definitely keep an eye on that. I'm so excited because our next episode is going to be our Christmas special.
I can't wait.
Which we are so excited for. So we're going to decide how we're going to do it. It's going to be like Christmas songs, Christmas films, mix of everything. Because my like traditions are very Disney focused when it comes to films at Christmas. So I'm excited.
Mine too.
To plan that.
So
we look forward to kind of getting you in the mood for the festive spirit. We're going to release that probably like a week and a half before Christmas, so you'll have some time to listen as you kind of make mince pies and gingerbread houses and decorate the tree, listen to our rumbling voices. And finally, if you have any inquiries, I mix queries and for goodness sake, any inquiries or suggestions for episode ideas, because we would love to hear them. Obviously, we have so many ideas ourselves, but you can never have too many ideas for episodes. So we'd love to hear from you. If you want to feature as a guest, let us know. So just feel free to email us at a sprinkle of pics. No, that's your Instagram.
That's my Instagram.
Our email address is sprinkleofdisneypodcast@gmail.com. We've been a Sprinkle of Disney. Have a magical rest of your day.